Parker Schnabel just pulled $2.89 million in gold in a single week, the biggest week of his entire career. But that number almost never happened. 6 weeks into the season, at the exact moment his operation had the most momentum, the machine feeding his sluice plant broke down. Roxan went silent, and every hour that plant sat idle was $8,000 in gold production Parker was never getting back. At the same time, he had just committed to expanding his cut by another 2 acres on a shrinking water license, a gamble worth 500 ounces that his own crew said would blow up their timeline. Just when we thought Sulphur Creek was coming to a close in typical Parker fashion, now he's saying, hey, I want even more dirt out of there. We're pushing this project all the way to its absolute limit. So I'm just hoping we can get everything done here in SLE, but it's just messing with our timeline. So here is what this week actually looked like. A mechanical failure that cost $40,000, a 2-acre bet with no guarantee, and an operation pushed so far past its limits that even the people running it weren't sure it would hold. This is exactly how Parker Schnabel got to $2.89 million. Hopefully it's just the seals, but if a piece of got between the piston and the housing, we might have a piston, and that's going to be a huge problem. The $35 million season. 6 weeks into the season, Parker Schnabel is 30 years old and running the most aggressive mining operation in the Klondike. The target he's committed to, not quietly projected, but committed to out loud to his crew, is more than $35 million in gold before freeze up. It's the kind of number that hangs over every shift, every machine hour, every decision made in the mud at 4 in the morning. And right now, impossibly, he's on schedule. We're in a situation where there's a ton of work and unrealistic expectations from a boss that likes to have unrealistic expectations. His crew lead Mitch has spent those 6 weeks methodically stripping every pay pocket from the 2-acre cut at Sulphur Creek. Good ground, consistent production, the kind of result that lets a crew breathe a little. But Parker isn't breathing. He never is. Parker believes the old-timer dredge that worked this ground decades ago missed gold. Real gold, not trace amounts, not residual scatter. He's convinced the pay streak extends further than any historical operation ever bothered to chase, running all the way up to the road. If he's right, there are another 500 ounces sitting undisturbed in that ground. At current prices, that's $1.75 million nobody has touched yet. So Parker makes the call. Expand the cut by another 2 acres and sluice everything before the water license expires. His team knows it blows up the timeline they've been running. They say so. Parker expands anyway. He's not closing Sulphur Creek out. He's gonna squeeze it until it has nothing left to give. It's been full throttle since the beginning of the season here in Sulphur, trying to get all the work done before the water license expires. Just want to make sure that we get what's ours and don't leave anything behind. Mitch knows Sulphur Creek is trending toward its natural close. Parker's read is that the fade is artificial. The old-timers quit where the terrain got complicated, not where the gold stopped. That decision is about to cost him everything, or make him more money than he's ever seen in a single week. The water license is the clock nobody can stop. Once it expires, Roxan shuts down regardless of what's still in the ground. Parker is looking at a 2-acre expansion on top of an already tight timeline, knowing that if anything goes sideways, equipment, weather, a mechanical failure, there's no buffer. Every delay comes directly out of his shot at 500 more ounces. The water license expiration is the wall at the end of every decision Parker makes at Sulphur Creek. Push harder, send in more trucks, run more equipment. None of it matters if the license runs out before the pay gets processed. If the crew can pull it off, Parker banks another 500 ounces. If they can't, he's burned time and resources on ground he never fully worked. With Parker, there is simply no middle outcome. The dead machine, a 2-acre expansion on a compressed timeline, isn't something you execute with the same crew and the same equipment that was already running. It requires more of everything. More machines, more truck hours, more coordination. Parker doesn't wait to be asked. He sends in reinforcements, 5 trucks, 2 excavators, a loader feeding the sluice plant. When the convoy rolls in, Mitch doesn't try to look too cool to be relieved. He needs every one of those machines, and he needs them now. The water license has an expiration date. The ground doesn't care about his schedule. And he's running a full expansion on top of everything already in motion. The operation hits full stride. And then the 220 loader dies. Yeah. Hey Mitch, it's 220 here. Sup real bad. Like it just ain't got no power. Barely making it up this ramp. There's no way I'm going to be able to keep up with this even at 100 yards an hour. This is not what we need right now. Not a partial failure, not a warning light that can be watched for a few hours. The machine stops, Roxan stops, and the whole operation goes silent. Without the 220 feeding Roxan, there's nothing to sluice. The plant that should be running around the clock sits completely still and the meter starts running. $8,000 an hour in gold production walking out the door and never coming back. Every minute is money Parker cannot recover. Every hour is dirt that's been stripped and prepped and stockpiled and now just sits there while the equipment that was supposed to process it stands dead. Mitch doesn't sugarcoat what this means. Parker's got all these ambitions. He says all these targets, all these plans for the season, and right now they've got one old loader out there and they're not sluicing. The dollar figure attached to that silence is what makes it brutal. $8,000 an hour isn't an abstraction. It's actual gold already stripped from the earth, already stockpiled, already waiting to be processed. The plant was supposed to be running right now. Instead, Roxan sits motionless, the shaker still, the water off, and the pay dirt going nowhere. Every minute costs more than most people make in a day, and Parker can't get a single one of those minutes back. And here's what the dollar figure per hour doesn't capture. Parker has all these ambitions and things he wants us to do this season, but we got one old loader out here and right now we're not sluicing. The psychological cost. A crew that's been pushing hard through a compressed timeline doesn't just lose production when a machine goes down. They lose momentum. They lose the rhythm that a running operation builds over a shift. Getting it back after a mechanical failure isn't as simple as restarting the machine. It requires someone at the top of the organization to set the tone, to make it clear that the breakdown is a chapter in the story, not the ending. That's Mitch's job in this moment, and he does it. That's the situation that mechanic Tyler Modica walks into. The diagnosis. Tyler Modica arrives at the 220 loader and starts reading the machine the way a surgeon reads a patient coming into crisis. Methodical, no wasted motion, every symptom pointing somewhere. First, a low hydraulic oil alarm. That's the entry point. Then he checks the sight glass on the transmission with the machine running and there's nothing there. Transmission oil critically low. Then he checks the other side and finds the opposite problem. The transmission is way over full, way past where it should ever be. The logic chain Tyler is working through is exactly this: alarm triggers. Sight glass shows nothing. Hydraulic side shows transmission over full. The fluid has to be coming from somewhere. Follow the path. The brake seals are the bridge between the hydraulic system and the transmission. Seals fail. Brake drags. Hydraulic oil routes into the transmission through the failed seal point. System starves and floods simultaneously. That's not a guess. That's a mechanical diagnosis built from physical evidence. With the machine running, the transmission oil was way high. It should be at the bottom of the sight glass here. We're way over full. Two readings pulling in opposite directions from the same machine. And when you understand the failure, it's a single problem running through the whole system like a chain reaction. The parking brake on the 220 is spring-loaded and controlled by hydraulic pressure. There's a piston inside the brake mechanism with seals that compress when hydraulic pressure is applied, releasing the brake and allowing the machine to move. When those seals fail, the brake doesn't release cleanly. It drags. And as it drags under load, hydraulic oil bleeds past the failed seals and routes straight into the transmission, overfilling it, contaminating it, and starving the hydraulic system of the fluid it needs to operate. That's exactly what happened to the 220. The parking brake seals failed. The brake was dragging under every load cycle. The transmission has been filling with hydraulic oil. And the whole system was heading toward a catastrophic cascading failure if it hadn't been caught when it was. So what caused this is the parking brake, and it's got a piston inside with seals that release the parking brake. These seals have failed and the parking brake is dragging, and it's filling the transmission with hydraulic oil. Tyler drains the transmission on the spot. But before anyone can breathe easy, There's one more thing that has to be ruled out. If a fragment of the piston broke free and jammed itself between the piston body and the brake housing during the failure, this isn't a seal replacement job anymore. That's a piston replacement. Out here in the Yukon mid-season, with the operation already running behind, a piston problem doesn't delay the week. It ends it. Tyler cages the brake using 3 compression bolts to hold the piston in place. Then pulls the 16 cover bolts and lifts the entire brake assembly off the machine. The piston is clean. No damage, no scoring, no fragments, no broken edges. The rubber seal that was supposed to keep hydraulic oil where it belonged is completely destroyed. Shredded. Done. But the piston itself is intact. And that changes everything. A seal job means Tyler has the parts in stock. He has the tools. He has the knowledge. Now it's execution and time. He strips the old seals, seats the new ones carefully, rebuilds the brake assembly from the inside out, bolts the cover back down, uncages the springs, reconnects the hydraulic lines and fills the transmission with fresh oil. What Tyler does in this repair is worth slowing down to appreciate. He's working alone in the field on a machine that's already cost the operation $40,000 in downtime. There's no shop, no lift, no controlled environment. Just tools, parts, and the specific knowledge of what this machine needs. The fact that he had the replacement seals in stock, that the right parts were available on site rather than requiring an emergency order from a supplier hours away, is itself a decision someone made months before this season started. Preparation that looked like routine until the moment it became essential. The machine fires up and runs like nothing ever happened. Roxan back online. 0 time to breathe. 5 hours after Roxan went silent, $40,000 in lost production. And just like that, the race is back on. For Mitch's crew, hearing Roxan come back to life, water rushing through the lines, the shaker table finding its rhythm, rocks tumbling through the sluice box, isn't just a mechanical event. It's the clock restarting. And they're already 5 hours behind on a timeline that had no slack in it to begin with. We got Roxan on a good clip here. The sluicing along very nicely. We're pushing this project here at Sulphur all the way to its absolute limit. We're getting through it, but we're not out of the woods yet. They don't talk about the time they lost. They don't absorb the $40,000 hit and use it as a reason to reset expectations. They run, trucks moving, excavators pushing, the loader feeding Roxan without stopping. Mitch drives the expanded cut the way Parker demanded. Every pocket worked. Every ton of stockpiled pay pushed through the plant. Every piece of dirt that might be carrying gold getting its chance to prove it. Parker has said it plainly. Everything up here is risk over reward. The risk this week is a massive volume of dirt to move with a shrinking amount of time to move it. The reward is 500 ounces and $1.75 million the old-timer dredge left behind. Parker looked at that equation and chose to run. He still thinks it's worth it. Everything up here is risk over reward. And right now the risk is we got ourselves a lot of dirt to move here. Not much time. But Parker thinks it's worth the reward. The water license clock doesn't care about breakdowns. It doesn't reset because the operation lost 5 hours to a mechanical failure. It just keeps counting down. And Mitch knows that every hour he's back online is an hour he might not have had. Every ton of material pushed through Roxan after Tyler got that machine running is material that could have sat in a stockpile until the license ran out and the season closed with gold still in the ground. The crew doesn't need to be told to push hard. They already know what this window is worth. Now the ground gets to answer. Parker has said it himself. A hot streak is something you ride, not something you admire. When Roxan came back online after the breakdown, there was no celebration. No acknowledgement of what Tyler had just pulled off in 5 hours. The crew just picked up where they left off. That's the culture Parker has built at his operation. One where a mechanical crisis gets fixed and then immediately becomes part of the past because there's still too much work left to do to spend time processing what almost went wrong. 827 ounces. The machines go quiet. The water cuts. The sluice box gets worked down carefully section by section. Every riffle lifted. Every pan checked. Gold cleanup is the moment every mining week leads to. And after the breakdown, after the lost hours, after the expanded gamble on 2 acres of ground Parker bet on with no guarantee, This is where the week either delivers or doesn't. There's no spin, no narrative, just a number on a scale. The ounce-by-ounce build during cleanup creates a specific kind of suspense because nobody knows where the number is going to land until it lands. You can look at the volume moved and make projections, but gold doesn't distribute uniformly. Pools, pockets. It concentrates in ways that ground-level work can't fully predict until the water runs and the sluice box gives up what it's been holding. So every measurement, 50, 100, 150, is both a confirmation and an escalation. Each one pushes the ceiling higher. Each one makes the next measurement matter more. 50 ounces, then 100, then 150. Keep going. 200, 250. A little more still. 300 right on the dot. Then the second container, another 40, then 80, then 106.5. Mitch's plant total, 406.5 ounces. That number needs to be put in context. Tyson ran 2 plants during his stretch of the season. Mitch ran 1. With half the equipment, a midweek mechanical failure that cost him 5 hours, and a 2-acre expansion that nobody had originally planned for, Mitch nearly matches what a 2-plant operation produced. Half the machines, nearly the same result. Let that sit for a second. The Mitch versus Tyson comparison is the sharpest data point in the whole week. It's one thing to say that a crew ran hard after a breakdown and produced good numbers. It's another to be able to say that one plant with a 5-hour hole blown in its production day came within range of matching 2 plants running uninterrupted. That's not just a reflection of the ground quality at Sulphur Creek. That's a reflection of what happens when a crew refuses to let a bad morning define the rest of the week. But Mitch's plant isn't the complete picture. When Parker's full weekly total comes together, everything running, every machine, every sluice box, Sulphur Creek's expanded cut included, the scale reads 827 ounces. 827 ounces in 1 week. At record gold prices, 827 ounces is worth exactly $2.89 million. The most cash Parker Schnabel has ever banked in a single week in his entire career. So this week our total is 827 ounces. Sick. Is that crazy or what? I was not expecting that. The number is a record. It's also quietly proof that every decision made under pressure this week. Tyler diagnosing the brake seal fast enough to keep the breakdown in hours rather than days. Mitch holding the crew's focus and driving production through a compressed timeline with no margin for error, protected the outcome. Parker doesn't reach $2.89 million without every one of those calls landing right. Parker's face when the number settles is that specific stillness. Not shock, but the quiet of someone whose math just got confirmed at a scale they hadn't fully let themselves believe. 800 ounces in a week. Mitch says you've got to be happy about that. Parker's happy, but he's already looking at what comes next. The ground didn't owe him this. This week didn't come out of nowhere, and it wasn't luck. Parker has spent several years building toward a season like this. Moving operations off the Indian River, getting set up on deeper, harder ground at Dominion, doing the slow, unglamorous work of stripping and prepping ground that produced nothing while the preparation was underway. After several years of just moving from the Indian River and getting set up in a lot deeper ground on Dominion, it's taken a long time of stripping and prep, and finally this season, I don't want to jinx it, but it's looking really good. We're coming out of the gates running. So hopefully we can just keep that up. From the outside it looked like grinding without payoff. Season after season of infrastructure investment that didn't show up as gold on a scale. From the inside it was the foundation. Every acre stripped, every plant relocated, every season of prep work was the reason this week was possible. You don't get a $2.89 million week without the years of setup that looked from the outside like the operation was going nowhere. Parker says it plainly. They're coming out of the gates running. Sulphur Creek is just killing it. But right beside that, he says something more telling. He says he just hopes they can keep it up. That's not humility. That's the competitive mindset that builds records. The understanding that momentum isn't something you earn once and then own. The loader will break again. The ground will get harder. Something unexpected is coming because something unexpected always does. The Klondike doesn't hand out good weeks. You have to go take them. That competitive mindset is what separates miners who have one great week from miners who build careers. Parker's read on Sulphur Creek that the old-timer dredge left 500 ounces in the extended pay streak. Turned out to be right, but it was a read, not a certainty. He committed resources, burned timeline buffer, and pushed his crew into a position where a single bad mechanical outcome could have turned the week into a story about what almost happened instead of what did. The read was right. The bet paid. And now Parker is already studying the next piece of ground, already making the next call, already running the next risk-over-reward calculation because that's what it actually takes to pull $2.89 million in 1 week. Parker already knows that. The morning after the biggest week of his career, he's back at it. Moving to the next project, pushing the next cut to its absolute limit because the season isn't over, and neither is he. This week proved that the infrastructure he's been building, the years of setup, the ground at Dominion, the full equipment lineup can produce at this level when everything goes right and still deliver records when things go wrong. Parker doesn't measure seasons by their best week. He measures them by whether the best week became a launching pad or a peak. That answer is still being written.